Welcome everyone to the first ever Annie's Project Showcase. Today's subject and kicking us off is first of all Iowa Annie's program, and they're going to be talking about cybersecurity and managing your financial risk. Before we get started, however, we're just going to cover a few things and just thank you first of all for attending our first ever showcase. I'm Doris Mold and I am one of two co-CEOs for Annie's Project, and I'm pleased to be with you today. Big reason why we decided to start this session on showcasing our wonderful programs across the country is that Annie's is celebrating 20 years this year. And if you want more information as far as upcoming programming, we invite you to check out our website, our social media accounts, and those will have regular updates as to what we are up to. We'd also like to thank Farm Credit for their overall support of our 20th anniversary activities and their long-term support of Annie's Project programming throughout the country. Just to introduce you to Ruth Hambleton, who is our Annie's Project founder. She is the one that had the vision to get this all started 20 years ago. And her inspiration for starting Annie's Project was her mother, the original Annie, who inspired Ruth to develop this program to help women farmers, ranchers, growers, and landowners. Just to let you know, we do have some other upcoming showcases that you might be interested in. So next month we have Managing for a Margin Squeeze from Colorado. We have on May 5th, the Hard but Necessary Conversation on Farm Succession from Missouri. September, we will have a session by Indiana Annies. October 6th, we will have one on agricultural law education by Maryland and Delaware Annies Project. And November 8th, we have a to be announced by West Virginia Annies. So look for those links and that additional information to be coming to you soon. Also wanted to help people or make people aware of a new pilot program that Annie's Project nationally is being part of. We do have a new program in cooperation with the Risk Management Agency. We are one of 4 pilot programs across the country to increase the number of crop insurance agents and adjusters within underserved communities, ours being women. So if you have an interest in learning more about the program, we will have information up on our website and Facebook as well, links to the program, and I'll put a link in the chat as well a little bit later if you'd like to sign up to attend that program. And also wanted to let you know that we are hosting a national conference this year in celebration of 20 years that will include leadership development, professional development, networking, and other activities. And that will be hosted October 18th through the 20th in St. Louis, Missouri. And with that, I'm going to welcome our panelists for today and our experts on cybersecurity. Madeline Schultz and Alexis Stevens are going to take the program from here. We're going to learn a little bit about Iowa Annies, and then we're going to dive into some cybersecurity. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being here and for being the inaugural showcase for us.
Well, thank you, Doris. I'm Madeline Schultz, and I'm super excited to be here for this showcase with my colleague, Alexis. And I'm going to be sharing my screen here for us all. So we are going to be talking about cybersecurity today, but first, Doris and Krish have asked us to provide a little bit of Annie's Project history for you. So this is a photo from way back in 2004 when Bob Wells taught the first Annie's Project class in Iowa in Washington County. Interestingly, that very first Annie's Project had many lessons on the computer, and they actually had the class at a school where they could use a computer lab. And so some of those computer lessons included how to use a spreadsheet, managing your email, different kinds of financial software that you could get on a floppy disk, and how to use Ag Decision Maker online. Ag Decision Maker went online just a couple of years before that very first Annie's project. So that was the start of Annie's project in Iowa. That same year, this group of people, and I think also Kelly from Indiana, met in Quincy, Illinois. And that was really the beginning of a national collaboration to expand and share Annie's project across many states. So that was just really instrumental in Annie's project history, and Iowa was very proud to be a part of that. So in the photo there is Ruth in the middle with Mary and Carisha from Missouri and Bob, Tim, and Kelvin from Iowa. So one of the things that began early on with Annie's project, both nationally and in Iowa, was support from the USDA Risk Management Agency and the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture Extension Risk Management Education grants. So that funding was really instrumental in getting Annie's project off the ground, both nationally and here in Iowa. And then Farm Credit has been a long time sponsor of Annie's project in Iowa as well as nationally. So I wanted to just bring that up. And next, let's turn it over to Alexis, because Alexis is actually our newest Annie's project facilitator here in Iowa. And Alexis, I'll turn it over to you to share your experiences as a new facilitator.
Hi, I'm Alexis Stevens. I'm a farm management specialist in West Central Iowa, and I've had the pleasure of doing 2 Annie's project courses, Managing for Today and Tomorrow. And in that picture, I am there, but I'm not presenting. I'm sitting in the corner staring at some financial documents. And then I've also just started doing Annie's project as well, and I've absolutely fallen in love with Annie's project. I was terrified the first time I had to facilitate, but it's just the best thing that I can do.
That's awesome. Thanks, Alexis. And we sure are lucky to have you in our state. So we have been doing Annie's project for many years here in Iowa. And this program really delivers a lot of value. So it's locally led, demand-driven farm management education. And we create really meaningful connections with our clientele, as well as the ag industry here in our states. And what we really love about Annie's project is that we see those measurable impacts on women and their farm businesses. And it feels good to be out there making a difference day after day. So throughout our years since 2004, we have had 131 Annie's project courses with 2,242 participants, and 95 Annie's inspired courses with over 1,200 participants. So we actually have created 14 different curriculum here in Iowa, and some of our favorites are Women Marketing Grain, which we have been doing since 2007. And for the last 2 years, we have added an advanced grain marketing course for women, which is super fun with lots of hands-on activities. We also did Women Planning Ag Businesses and Managing for Today and Tomorrow, which we both created both of those in 2012. Of course, Managing for Today and Tomorrow was developed with a national NIFA grant. So that was pretty cool to work on. So in the picture here, we have Nicole Jonas, and she was in my 2012 Women Planning Ag Businesses class. She developed a business plan and has since been supporting her family with her agricultural business, growing ornamentals, vegetables, and eggs on her small farm. So we were just out at her farm this week because our local TV station wanted to interview some Annie's Project participants. So it's really fun to have these long-term relationships with these women who are just doing amazing things. And one of our newest Annie's inspired curriculum curricula is women managing farmland. So just a quick kind of history of what we've got going on in Iowa, but we're super proud of our long-term commitment to the program. And it takes a lot of teamwork in our state, and we're just really excited that we continue to have great colleagues to keep this program going. So now we're going to talk about cybersecurity. And just to give you a quick overview about this project, we are implementing this into all of our Annie project courses this year. So this is brand new. Alexis just introduced this in her Annie's project class last night, and she has a poll for us here. So if you could take a moment and answer the poll, that would be wonderful.
I was going to add, folks, just so you're aware, the polls are anonymous, so we don't know how you've answered. So if you're at all concerned about that, nothing shows up as far as names are concerned.
So quite a few of you, nearly half, have know someone who's affected by a cyber attack. And maybe by the time with our presentation, that number might increase. So the point there is that the adversary is out there. People are impacted, and people do lose money and have other difficulties and challenges when things go wrong. So we want to talk about who the adversary is a little bit, and then we're going to introduce Frankie Farmer to you. And she is our example of someone who is trying to do a good job of being safe on the internet. And Alexis is going to take on all of the Frankie Farmer pieces that we have for you today. So you'll have fun with that. And then we'll wrap up with talking a little bit more about the mitigation strategies and what you can do to stay safe on the internet. So Alexis, thank you for sharing those poll results. So the attackers can vary from those with very little skill to professional hackers and even nation states. And it's important to know that they use both technology and social skills to attack, because they're very good at getting us to do what they want, amazingly so. And their primary goal is often money. So just keep that in mind. So being an adversary is very profitable. You can see there's a lot of dollars on this chart about the victim loss. But the business email compromise and the email account compromise, the BEC-EAC that you see there, is well over $2 billion. So, and that is by far the largest category. So we're definitely going to talk about that with you today. But you can see that a lot of money is lost through cyber attacks. So that's why we're so glad that you're here today, learning more about cybersecurity. And Alexis, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
This is Frankie. Frankie wants to be safe on the internet, but she feels like there's attacks on her privacy and her information every day. So we're going to follow Frankie through some situations where we will learn simple tips that we could take to be safer on the internet. So one day Frankie gets an email and it looks like it's from her bank. And the email says, "Dear Frankie, we are updating our system due to a breach and need you to transfer your money to another account to keep your account secure with us. Please respond with your current bank account number to confirm that we may move your funds safely." This sounds a little fishy. What should Frankie do? Frankie should never give out sensitive information, especially from an unsolicited email. She should call her bank directly and ask them about the email. If the bank confirms that it's a scam, she should block the sender and delete the email. Remember that your bank or co-op will never ask you for information that they already have, such as account numbers, usernames, passwords, or your social security number. Always verify if you get an email, a text, or a phone call that seems suspicious.
Well, Alexis, thank you for introducing us to Frankie, and we hope that she stays safe with email and does not get her email account compromised. One thing I forgot to mention to all of our listeners today is that Doris is going to send you a copy of this slide set, as well as a handout, and we also have some links for additional resources. So I just wanted to let you know, so don't worry if you can't furiously scribble down all the notes, because we will be sharing this with you. So how do these attackers or adversaries pick you? Well, quite often it is an attack of opportunity. It's very random. It can sometimes be sector focused. It can actually be targeted towards agriculture. Some other sectors that could be affected might be the medical system, for example. So there is a persistent threat, and they do want you. And that is the main point we want to stress, that don't think that you're just a little farmer or a little business person and they don't want you. They do, because everyone has valuable information that they are looking for. So what do they want? We mentioned this right away, that money is the biggest driver, and they will try to get you to redirect or put that money into a different account. They'll try to gain access to your accounts. They'll try to get you to purchase things and create some fraud that way, or they could use ransomware to disable your systems so that you have to pay them in order to get those systems back. And that is actually how this whole cybersecurity project got started, because in fall of 2021, there was at least 2 different agricultural cooperatives that were attacked during harvest, and they had to completely revert back to paper systems, and it really created a lot of havoc. And one of the great things with the Extension Risk Management Education grants is that that situation happened in September, and we wrote that grant project in October and got funded in April. So we were able to get our project started. But that is exactly why we got started, because we were seeing those issues in Iowa. So they're after your data. They're looking for that personal identifiable information, any kind of records, operational and infrastructural data. You know, farm businesses are very complicated these days. We've got livestock buildings, poultry buildings, dairy farms with a lot of technology, a lot of connectivity to the internet. There's a lot of infrastructure there, and we don't want the wrong person to get that data or be able to operate our systems. So some of the threats are disclosure. So that might mean sharing our information publicly with people that shouldn't have that information, reusing our bank accounts. It could be a first step to some other form of attack on you. And they may be holding your information for hostage. So that's what they're looking for with data. They might also be trying to destroy the public trust. And in agriculture, that is something we need to be very concerned about, because we don't want situations where people have different values and they're trying to attack certain types of agriculture, or cause a major disruption in the food supply, or attack certain brands or companies. And it can sometimes be eco-driven. It could be animal welfare driven. So these are all things related to public trust that we do need to be aware of in agriculture. And disruption of our systems. And I worry about this, especially with our animal production facilities, where we do have a lot of internet control over our buildings and you know, video that we're capturing for security purposes. We just don't want those kinds of things falling into the wrong hands and potentially disrupting our production systems. Terror is another activity that the attackers or adversaries might be looking for. And it could be personal. And just, you know, my sister, just as a little story here, she was attacked by an adversary, and they were threatening that she could lose her medical license. She is a medical doctor and she's an MD. And so, you know, that was a personal attack. She could lose her medical license, and she was actually very worried about it. And they can be very convincing, right? And we do have to be worried about the ag or eco terror. So now, Alexis, I'm going to turn it over to you for another story with Farmer Frankie.
All right. And I'm going to launch a poll that you can participate in while I am talking about Frankie. So Frankie now receives an email that looks like it's from an online realtor, and she purchases many products from them.
Sorry about that. It was a bit slow, Alexis.
The email reads, please click on this link to reset your password to your account. This looks a little fishy to Frankie. So what should Frankie do? Frankie should absolutely not click on that link, because people could use that to collect her sensitive information. She should type the website's real URL into her web page. And then she should also delete the email immediately, since it looks fishy. She could call or email the real site for the company to alert them about the email scam, because it's possible if Frankie had clicked on that link that it would take her to a page that looks similar, almost exactly like a legitimate website. But in the background, they're running a program that would steal all of Frankie's information.
Thanks, Alexis. And I see that everyone has answered the poll that you put up affirmatively, that yes, they have received phishing emails. And so this is a big problem, and they can be very confusing. I know my husband is always asking me, like, is this for real? And I always have to assure him, no, we do not need to worry about that. But, you know, people are drawn into this. So what are the targets in agriculture? Again, we've got that personal information with that critical data. And it was estimated that in 2021, over 37 billion records were lost and stolen. So this does occur on a regular basis. Process systems can be shut down. And this is what happened with those agricultural co-ops that I mentioned in 2021. They were not able to operate because of the ransomware attack, and took them some time to recover. And control systems. You sometimes hear about this on the news, an attack on a power grid, pipelines, or other physical assets that are held captive. So what are the attack vectors? Well, we have basically two main ways, really. It's people and systems. So there's vulnerable people and there's vulnerable systems, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So those vulnerable systems just don't have enough controls, and so it's easy to access their systems. Or maybe they are misconfigured, not actually set up properly. And sometimes it's just a matter of not installing your updates. You know, we all receive those update requests on our computers and our phones, and it's super important to actually do all those updates on a regular basis, because those help to avoid some of the bad actors getting in. And then there's those vulnerable processes, which can be internal to us or external. For example, if you are sharing information with your local agricultural cooperative, you may want to ask them, what systems do they have in place to protect your personal data? And so that's an example where we'd want to just ask some questions and make sure that they're taking good care of us, and we are taking good care of ourselves with our own data management as well. So here's where we want to talk about some social engineering, and this is where we said that it's technology based. Yes, the adversaries have a lot of technical skills, but they also have a lot of social skills, and they're very patient. So we've already talked about phishing, and spear phishing is just really targeted. That is where they're looking for you personally, or they were looking for a group of people that you are a part of. And so that's just really targeted. And then one of the things we wanted to bring to your attention with the email attachments is that people have been sending some fake invoices and asking you to pay them, and they look real. But if you ever have a question, we want to make sure that you call the person that you're doing business with and just verify that invoice was from them. And of course, they can also access us through websites, phone, and text. And Alexis, I'll turn it back over to you for another Farmer Frankie story.
Here's Farmer Frankie again. Now she's browsing Facebook. And she comes across a post from her friend Jamie that reads, "Get to know me, then copy and paste your answers to join the fun." So Jamie lists out her favorite color, her pet's name, her school mascot, holidays, movies, lots of personal information. Should Frankie join in that fun? Nope. Frankie should not copy and paste her answers and post those answers on her Facebook page or on any social media page. People could use that information to infiltrate Frankie's accounts. She should also warn Jamie about the potential dangers of sharing personal information like that on social media.
Thank you, Alexis. I think Frankie has some important lessons for all of us today.
And I think I have a poll to launch.
Okay, go for it.
So this poll is about malware. So if you just go ahead and check any of the ways that you think malware could enter the system, and then Madeline's going to share that with you.
Okay. Well, we're getting some quick answers here, Alexis.
Yeah, somebody was really quick.
Yeah, this audience is really good at entering polls. So we have lots of responses, especially for email and websites. Maybe a few less for text messages and phone calls, but phone and text messages are definitely entry points for malware and ransomware. For example, another sister of mine got an email, or excuse me, a phone call, and then they asked her to go to her computer and do these things online. And so the phone was actually the point of entry, and they were very, very convincing. And she almost fell for it. She was they were very, very convincing. They are very, very good social actors as well as technical actors. So thank you for completing our poll. Good job, everyone. So what does ransomware mean? Well, this means that computers are unusable. They can't function. They're going to steal your data and hold it for a ransom, or they could also shut down your operational systems that you may have in your farm or agribusiness. They could also use it for extortion. And by that, we mean that they could release your data to people who should not have that data. And your customers could be affected as well if you have some customer information or even employee information on your computers that others could wrongfully get a hold of. So you were right. Everything in our poll 3, it was a way to get malware. So just be aware that you may not even be on your computer. It could definitely come through your phone with a call or a text message as well. Here at Iowa State University, we've had several situations where they'll try to send you an email from somebody you know at Iowa State, and it's asking you to do things or asking you like, hey, that person needs help. But if you look very closely at their email, it's like maybe just a little bit different. And I think, Alexis, you had an example of this just this week or last week.
Yeah, so we hired a new vice president for Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. He hasn't actually started yet, but I received an email from him last week and he asked me to buy a bunch of gift cards for him. And I should definitely not call him or text him or ask any questions, just buy the gift cards and then send those numbers to him on that email. So I decided, since I'd never actually met the man, that maybe that one wasn't legitimate.
Oh my gosh, yes, but they can be very confusing. Okay, Alexis, I'll turn it back to you to talk with Frankie Farmer about malware.
Yeah, so Frankie Farmer's browsing the internet in her free time again. And while she's browsing, she comes across a pop-up for an advertisement that's for a product that she has been searching for weeks and hasn't been able to find a retailer that will sell it. So Frankie's tempted to click on that link. What should she do? Frankie should not click on that advertisement. If she clicks on it, it's possible that if she downloads anything, a scammer could be downloading malware into her computer.
Okay, so Frankie needs to be careful of malware and those suspicious ads. Thank you, Alexis. So here is just a few different types of malware. And if any of these things impact your computing system, you probably need to call a professional to come and repair this. This is not something you can typically handle yourself unless you're really tuned into this type of thing. But some of the types of malware are a keylogger. This is someone that's keeping track of what is typed on the computer and delivers that information to someone else. So if you type your bank account number, if you type your credit card number, they could potentially steal that information and get it into the wrong hands. Adware is what Frankie was experiencing. That's causing unwanted ads to pop up. And that could really lead people down a rabbit hole where they don't want to be as well. Bots control the computer without you knowing it. It might be something running in the background, and it could just be there kind of silently until a certain situation occurs, and then it attacks. Ransomware is something that causes a computer that say that the computer is holding, or excuse me, the ransomware is holding your files for ransom. So don't ever pay a ransom. First, call a professional to help you out. And it's interesting, Alexis, that oftentimes they will say, you know, don't contact so-and-so, or you know, make sure you don't tell someone about this because you can't trust that other person, when in fact they are the people that you cannot trust. So it certainly can be confusing. So this is the point in our program when we're doing it in a classroom situation where we ask people to get into small groups. And we're not going to do that today on our virtual webinar, just because we were afraid we would run out of time. But we did want to let you know that we are encouraging some activities as we go through these sessions, and the Annie's Project methodology always encourages those hands-on activities. And so Alexis, you and Doug did this activity in the Fort Dodge class, and I was just wondering if you could say a few words about that.
Yep, so we had a small group, so they got in groups of 2 and they thought about ways that their farm might be open for attack, or that just their personal systems might be open for attack. And so they kind of brainstormed, the sharing on social media or clicking on the emails, that sort of thing. And then they even branched out into wondering if they ran a hog barn with computers and apps on their phone, how they might be vulnerable to an attack on there and might lose access to their system. And then even talked about some of the precision ag that hooks up to some of the larger companies, making sure that their information was safe if they were sharing, harvest information like that. And the big thing that we took away from that one is that we do things to keep ourselves safe. And then we have to have some trust in those larger organizations, those implement organizations, to keep our information safe as well.
Thanks, Alexis. That was really helpful. It's very important to recognize that we could be the vulnerable person that gets a bot or ransomware that then could be transferred to our bank or our local cooperative or others that we're doing business with. So we could be that vulnerable point in the system ourselves. But on the other hand, that larger system, the bank, the cooperative, the electric co-op, they could also be vulnerable to attack, and that could transfer to us personally as well. So it can go both ways, and everybody needs to do their part to keep everyone safe in our cyber world that we live in. And so that was really great that those participants brought that out, Alexis.
Say, Madeline and Alexis, if I could just interject something here, and certainly participants, if you have some other things that you want to add, please feel free to put those in the chat. I'm sure that Madeline and Alexis would love to hear from you. That's the way you could be interactive today. But we did have a comment earlier, and it really wasn't a good time to take a little break into this, but Brenda, who is one of our participants, said that when you get one of those strange emails that you weren't expecting, if you hover over the link, if you hover over like their email address, oftentimes it will tell you who is there. It might look like it's from, farmers cooperative, but if you but if you go to it, it might have a Gmail account or something else. So usually a retailer, somebody that you work with, isn't going to send you one of those odd emails. And like you said, call them if you have any question. But oftentimes, Brenda's right. If you take your mouse and hover over that, you'll see that it really isn't your cooperative's address or your bank's address. It's somebody else that's trying to get you to respond. So that was a really good point, Brenda. Just wanted to make sure that we brought that up for everyone else to hear.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Brenda and Doris. That's important.
We did have a comment here. Thank you for raising that point. What about the vulnerabilities to large service providers who will be listening in to our farm information, RE, personal information records, how we are using their products, etc.?
So I think a lot of us sometimes get that feeling like we just want to stick our heads in the sand and not participate in anything online. I know I've had some attacks on my own personal things, and I'm just like, I'm done. No more social media. I'm going to pay everything in cash. But at a point, we have to have trust in those organizations that we're working with, whether it be the bank or the co-op, that they have hired people that their whole job is to look for attacks and to mitigate that. And with attacks, the cybersecurity experts say that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Just assume that there is something running in the background of every single system at all times. And it takes us almost a year before we even are able to find those. But so we can't avoid all of those attacks, but we can choose to work with organizations that have better systems in place. And Madeline's going to show you one of those with multi-factor identification that is really your number one way to stay safe.
Mm-hmm. And if you have questions about what the business is doing to secure your information, ask them and make sure that you do feel comfortable working with them. Last year at our Women in Ag Leadership Conference, one of our speakers was Megan Wheelock, and her job is to keep the customers of John Deere Financial safe. And so she's a really great person and has a lot of experience in the industry. And it was really neat to hear her perspective and to know that there are people like Megan out there protecting all of us. Okay, well, we are going to talk about mitigation now. So we've heard a little bit of the scary things that are out there. And now what can we do to help ourselves? Awareness is critical, and that is really what we're trying to do through our cybersecurity project that we have right now. And bringing this to our Annie's Project participants and just increasing their awareness and just helping them think about what could happen and to develop a plan to help them be more secure. And a part of that is just seeking out the newer and better technology and seeking out training opportunities when they are available. Like I mentioned at our conference last year, we did bring cybersecurity to the conference to provide that training opportunity. And there's other training opportunities that are out there. At the end of this slideshow, we've got some resources for you. And so that is kind of some self-study that you'll be able to take in as well. And some people that you could ask questions of as well. So we hope that we're giving you a little touch of this, but if you have questions, we want you to reach out and ask. And we don't want people to be afraid of using the internet. The internet really is a wonderful thing. It makes our lives better. But we just need to, like anything, even driving our car, you know, it's a scary thing too. But we have to take the precautions. We have to put our seatbelt on, obey the traffic laws, things like that, and we will be safe. So we want you to feel safe on the internet as well. So one strategy for mitigation is segmentation. And this is just kind of a fancy way of saying divide things out necessarily, like don't put all your eggs in one basket. So one of the big things that we stress with our Annie's Project audiences is to separate work and play computers. So the computer that your child or grandchild is playing computer games or watching movies on should not be the same computer that you're doing payroll on, for example, because that's just opening up your financial systems to potential adversaries. So keep work and play separate, not only for children, but yourself too, and just really use those work computers for your work aspects in your farm or agribusiness, and play on other computers. So that's a biggie. Data segmentation, not everyone needs access to all data. So you may have employees in your farm business who need to control operational systems, hog buildings, poultry buildings, things like that. But they don't need access to accounting systems or things like that they really have nothing to do with. So so that means there should be separate computers for those so that they don't need to access everything. And just keeping those access rights to systems and processes, thinking about who needs what access and providing only that access. And it's not that you don't trust your employees or family members. It's just a way to segment things so that if there is an adversary attacking in one area, they don't get a hold of everything. So now we want to talk a little bit more about that social engineering. Remember, the adversary is very, very good at social engineering, and they're really great scammers. And yeah, I wish I had time to tell you about how they scammed two of my sisters who are really smart people, but they can be very convincing in their storytelling. So our technology can help, and technology is getting better and better. I'm using Microsoft on this computer right now at work, and our IT people tell me that Microsoft has very good virus and malware scanners, and so that it really does help us feel more secure in our work. And you know, just being educating ourselves and all of those around us who are using our computers. Never underestimate the attacker's ability to fool us, because it can happen really easily. We've been talking about some things that, you know, really look fishy and straightforward. They're fishy, but sometimes it's much more complicated. So be really careful about money transfers and how you use your email, especially when sending sensitive information like a tax return, for example. So let's talk about multi-factor authentication. I was going to spell that out in this slide, and I forgot to, Alexis, but MFA is multi-factor authentication. And Alexis, I might turn it over to you if you don't mind to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So this is the thing that we probably hate having to do the most, but it's going to keep you the most safe. So the biggest weakness in the username password system is that the passwords can be hacked. Somebody can figure it out. Maybe you wrote it down, they can see it. But with the multi-factor, what you're doing is you're typing in your username and your password, and then you need some other device. So they're going to send you an email or a text or even a phone call, something, or there's some apps as well that you can use where you have to grab, you do your username, your password, and now you have to enter that code that they sent you as a text. So that means that even if someone has access to your username and password, and let's say they're sitting over in Europe, unless they have access to your phone where that text message is sent, they can't get that multi-factor way to identify you and to authorize you into the account. So having that is a way to feel a lot more secure. So if your bank, and I think most banks, if not all banks, do this, any organization that is going to store any of your bank account or credit card information, you really want them to do some sort of multi-factor.
Thanks so much, Alexis. And I know when Iowa State University first started doing the multi-factor authentication in 2019, I was so annoyed, but we really got used to it, and I'm glad they're keeping us safe. So it can be, you know, like any thing, it's a challenge to get used to, but once you understand the importance of it, and it just becomes second nature. So if you're struggling with it a little bit, don't worry, it'll get better. So good passwords are essential, and they need to be longer and more complex to be strong. And we need to keep them secret. So many times you walk into someone's farm office, and no kidding, they do have this on their computer. Yes, this is my password. Because they want to keep it handy so they can remember it. But try not to do that. Try to keep your passwords where others won't be using them. Don't reuse the passwords. And you can use password keepers. Alexis, do you want to talk just a little bit more about password keepers? Because that might not be something familiar to our audience.
So there are a couple of different apps out there where they will basically keep and store all your information and then generate these random, very complicated passwords that would take millions of years to crack. So all you need is access to that one app, and then it stores everything in there. And so then there's that fear of, well, what if that app gets hacked? What if the cloud gets hacked? That's a possibility, but those companies and those organizations have so much at stake because they're keeping passwords for so many other different organizations that you can guarantee that they have the best people on that, and they have lots and lots of different processes to make sure that there's continuity, that they don't lose your passwords, that they can't get hacked as easily. So there's that. You could always write them down on a piece of paper that you keep in your desk. The problem with that is, one, if somebody decides to break into your house and finds that in your desk and then logs into your computer and starts shopping, or if you had a house fire or something like that. So those different apps that have password keepers that you could keep in your phone are a great option if you're like me and you absolutely cannot remember 50 different passwords that you use every day.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alexis. I appreciate your explanation of that. And keep going, because we want to hear more about Frankie.
All right, so Frankie's got a password problem. She's eating lunch with her friend Jamie, and Jamie tells her about this great new site that sells exactly the product that Frankie's been looking for, and it's a great price too. So Jamie says, Frankie, all you have to do to sign up is create an account with a username and password, and then the website will store all of your data, your email, your credit card information, your bank account information, your address, which means all you have to do is click on the product and you've bought it, and it's real quick and easy. Well, Frankie is like me and decides that there's no way she's going to remember another new password, that she also knows that she's not supposed to use the same password over and over and over. So she's decided that maybe if she thinks about something in a story form or something that is special and important to her, she can make a password. So she thinks about her dog Fluffy, and she decides that she's going to create some sort of story about Fluffy and create a strong password that way. So in order to do that, she decided, well, I better not just use Fluffy, because Fluffy is not a very strong password. We want to include numbers and symbols. And so the other thing about Fluffy is Frankie's social media is absolutely full of pictures of Fluffy. And it's talking about when Fluffy was adopted, which was Christmas of 2022. It's pretty obvious to anyone who sees Fluffy on that social media that Frankie really likes Fluffy. So Frankie decides to start creating some passwords with a story. And so she goes with Fluffy, hashtag adopted from the shelter, and a couple of symbols, and thinks, wow, that's really long, but maybe they could still guess it. So then she decides to start abbreviating things. She comes up with fluff, hashtag mass 2022, and some random symbols. And she's afraid, what if they can still figure it out? So she replaces the L with an exclamation point. Then she decides to start playing around and switch numbers in front and put exclamation points in place of letters. And then she starts to worry, there's no way I'm going to remember this crazy password. So then she thinks of a sentence, Fluffy likes sticks and belly rubs, and comes up with this, taking the first letter of each one of those sentences, FLSAB. Then she decides it's not complicated enough, so she starts adding in numbers and symbols, and eventually she comes up with 22 FLS at BR, which is that she adopted Fluffy in 2022 at Christmas time. And I have a poll real quick to do, one last poll.
Okay.
About
And,
Frankie, your password.
I use that story for my passwords, because you know how your bank is just always asking you to update your password. And sometimes I forget what story I created.
I do that as well.
But
Or
it's
that
really,
variation.
it was really fun to see all those variations of the Fluffy password, right?
But, and again, if it was me, I'd still probably not remember the one I finally chose. And so that's where I would be with that password keeper.
Yep, then you're set.
And I did see a question in the chat for recommendations on apps. The only one I know about is OnePass, I think is what it's called. Some phones, I know the iPhone will automatically do that for you. There's part of an application in that where it will generate those random passwords for you. But not recommending one over the other. There are several out there. My husband uses one, I think, called Duo. I'm not sure, but there are several choices. They're all good. They all do the same thing.
Mhm.
And it
Yes,
looks,
so our audience did a very good job of choosing the weakest password there. So good job, everyone. Thanks for learning about passwords with us today. So backing up your files is more important now than ever. And it's one of those basic things like, okay, we need you to have a strong password, and we need you to back up. If you only do two things, do those two things, okay? Back up and keep those passwords strong. But you want to back up your files off-site. And that's important for both ransomware and disaster recovery. We know there's tornadoes in Iowa. Some of us live in flood zones in our parts of the country, or we have other potential national disasters or regional disasters. So back up your information and your data and store it off-site, and that will really help out in those situations. And that really helps harden you against ransomware, because ransomware can even find things on backup drives on your computers and in your system, because we're so interconnected with all of our systems, our phones, tablets, computers, and so on. So having that offsite backup will really help with that. So now we want you to take a moment to think about, what is your plan? We've talked about those adversaries and the damage they can do to us. And we've talked about some ways that you could mitigate your cybersecurity and strengthen your cybersecurity, I should say. And we'd like you to just take a moment to think about one thing that you will do to keep you and your farm safer. And you can jot that down in front of you. And if anyone would like to share in the chat box, you are welcome to. That's optional. So we hope you have some good ideas for keeping yourself safe. And we have some resources to share with you on the Ag Decision Maker website. We have some new cybersecurity articles, and we're planning to put more there as well as time goes on. So you can check out Ag Decision Maker, and we have a link there as well as a QR code. So if you enjoy QR codes, you can click on that. And again, this presentation will be emailed to you, so you can follow up that way as well. And then we have some materials, especially for our audience of women in agriculture at the Center for Cybersecurity. And so you can see those websites and QR codes there as well. So we hope that you will take advantage of those resources to learn more about cybersecurity. And here is our information. If you have some questions for Alexis and I, our information is there. And we have been working with Doug Jacobson and Lindsay Foster at the Center for Cybersecurity Innovation and Outreach. And they have just been tremendous partners with us. Alexis and I didn't start out as cybersecurity experts. I still don't claim to be a cybersecurity expert, but we have sure learned a lot from Doug and his team. And that has been a part of our grant project, is expanding our own skills as farm management specialists so that we can help others, because we know it's just really important to keep our clientele safe online.
So we did have a question and a comment, and I do have a follow-up question myself. So one person said, be more conscientious about creating backups. Very good. That's an important thing. And then we had a question. Is it safe to keep your passwords on an external hard drive?
Well, there's still that possibility that you lose access to that information. Just like if you did a regular computer, it could get stolen, broken. If you were to stick that external hard drive into a system that you didn't trust, it's still possible that someone could get that information. If it never went on the internet, never went in a system that was connected to the internet ever, then, I mean, that would be safe. And I know people that do keep their passwords in a file on their computer. And they may even lock those files that you need a password to get into the file, but
So we've had one person put in caps, no, and very emphatic, and another person said only if it's encrypted. So some good comments there. I do have a question, and you didn't cover this, but Alexis's name reminds me to ask this. Many people have an Alexis in their home that is plugged in and, you know, is directly connected to the internet. And how safe are those? Because I've noticed that Alexis, we have one, but she remains unplugged a lot of the time. We mainly play her for music, but there are times that when we're talking, I can see when we don't even mention the name, that I can see her lighting up. And then I scold her for listening in on the conversation. And that has been a topic of conversation. So, what are the rules on things like an Alexis in your home?
well, I have a counterintelligence military background, so I don't have anything beyond our cell phone, which I'm aware of is listening to me too, because all I have to do is think about buying something and there's an ad for it. But yeah, again, you've got to trust the company that you bought the equipment from, that that there's some safety measures there, but it does open you up to more vulnerability when the more devices you have connected. And so if it was me on my farm, I probably wouldn't have those having access to running my barns or
Right.
sensitive equipment. But I'm often tempted to stick my head in the sand and take all of the devices and throw them all out of the house and tell the kids they can't have their phones, but we can't live in that world either, can we?
Right, right. There's a balance to be struck. I also did put some links in. Those links were created by me or with using Zoom, so they weren't coming from a disinterested third party, folks. So if you do click on the links, they will take you to registering for those upcoming sessions. I just wanted to clarify, since we are in our cybersecurity session, that those did come from me and not somebody else. So we've got some other comments. Data is king. Google is in the business of selling consumer data. Yes, they are.
That's what we say. If you're not paying for the service, such as the social media, you are the product that's being sold.
Yes.
So be aware of that and decide if that's something you're comfortable with or not.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun, and we were just super excited to share our cybersecurity lessons with you. Our farm management team is also implementing some cybersecurity into other programs that we have, such as farmland leasing. And we did some programs this winter in partnership with Farm Bureau, which we brought cybersecurity to as well. And next fall, we are having a day-long conference on cybersecurity. So this is a new area for us, and we're just excited to share it. And it's been a really great project to work on.
Thank you so much, Madeline and Alexis. We really appreciate you being our first showcase. And this has been recorded, and we will make this available. So I know that there are people out there waiting for the recording that could make us live. And please feel free, everyone, for sharing that as well. And I will be sending an email out to participants today with those handouts that Madeline and Alexis prepared. So be looking for those, and those will come to you from Doris at anniesproject.org. So if they don't come from that address, then you know it's not me. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Doris.